JB here. Friday, May 9th, 3:29 on this fine Friday afternoon. Talk quick about the market, some names I'm looking at, go from there. S&P from almost flat as a pancake, down 0.02% here in a annoying Friday, right? No clear direction. Markets opened or tried to open higher, hit SPY all the way up to 567, and then we dropped into the 1030 at about 1030, and then we've been chopping around ever since. A 0.8% trading range, so not too small a trading range. It's just that range happened pretty much in the first hour of trading. So not fun for lottos. Some of the fun or the better days would be like a follow through, right? So if we opened flat and rallied into the close, that'd be a great day, right? If we opened higher and reversed and sold off for the rest of the day, that'd be a great day. Days like today, just not the fun day, right? So uh, in lieu of trying to trace, be aggressive on lottos, that I've been kind of the strategy I've had over the last couple of weeks with the premiums coming down as the week went by, just easier because the premiums were already elevated with what happened with Liberation Day and so on and so forth. So uh, today was another one of those days I was going to be look to be aggressive, but as the day kind of went on, it's like probably better day to kind of sit on my hands and kind of look for some names I might look for starting next week, especially if we get some positive developments over the weekend. So that's kind of the overall market. Take a look at the S&P. I've talked about 570 and then maybe 564. We got all the way down to 562.76, so we'll have to watch that. Just my thing is, so you already had Trump this morning. I don't know if I was on the rant or he had already announced. I think he did already announce it, but he thought 80% tariffs on China was just right. I think they came up with that 50% plus a 10% times two. A 10% plus the 20%. I forget how. Like it's almost. And then there's headlines that he just just threw out that number. I mean, it's a lot of livelihoods and things on the line to just be throwing out numbers. But it is what it is. That's kind of where we're at. You just hope that this weekend something comes out of it, whether a goodwill gesture, whether a pause, whether it goes back to just a blanket 25%. I'm not sure. That all to me the ideal scenario is a pause and then work on having a date for another trade discussions, neutrals, or they come to the U.S., we go to China, whatever the case may be. Uh, that would be the best case scenario, and if that's the case, then maybe we're up 1% or so on Monday. If it's a extremely bullish meeting, maybe higher than that. If no, some tit for tat agreements, no big scale back, maybe a little bit of scale back on the tariffs for now. I mean, maybe we're flat come Monday, and if there's no update, and the U.S. or China stands kind of says puts their foot on the ground, says, "Hey, we're not gonna come to any agreement unless the threshold's under 50% or whatever." Then I mean, the future. I would assume the S&P is gonna be down over 2%, probably more. So don't want to see that scenario play out. Like I've been saying since the start of April, I'm surprised at how this has all played out to begin with. So it wouldn't surprise me to see no deal over the weekend. I would hope that's not the scenario. But if I was convicted enough that there would be a deal, I'd probably be getting some more spec positions into next week. But to me, I'd rather uh, yeah, I don't have the conviction. All right, so that's kind of the overall market. We'll see how things play out next week. We got a lot of the earnings out of the way, so that's good. We're talking about the economic stuff, right? So the GDP now from the Atlanta Fed, that's at 2 point whatever percent. So you have to think the second quarter. Well, there's going to be two more revisions on the first quarter GDP. So who knows if that, based on the import situation, if if that goes even lower. But you kind of hope that at least we squeeze out a positive, so we won't have back-to-back negative GDP growth numbers. And then there's still plenty of earnings next week. Got past the Fed, so to see the market holding up here, it looks like it's gonna be a red week. But all things considered, the 9-day rally coming into this week, consolidation back over the 50-day moving average, tested the 200-day moving average yesterday. I think that all sets things up well. So hopefully nobody fumbles the football over the weekend, get some deals. And then supposedly Trump had said there was going to be a big announcement before they leave for the Middle East by Monday or before the weekend. I don't know if that's even has anything to do with the markets, but if it does, hopefully it's a thing that's a positive catalyst. All right. So that's kind of the overall markets. And then I always say the trend is your friend, right? So the 50-day moving average, the amount of stock trading over 50-day on the S&P is actually up today, despite the market being flat. So that's again over the December 9 levels. Now it's heading to the start of December because at that point there was over 70% of the names on the S&P trading over the 50-day moving average. And then the amount of stocks trading over their 200-day moving average, flat as a pancake. I guess that's a good sign, all things considered. All right, so just really quick on the individual names, and I keep talking about GameStop, and I don't know, I got to probably do a little more due diligence this weekend, kind of figure out like get in my head where the valuation could be on GME if they once they announce the Bitcoin purchases. But if you look at the chart, it's been the last couple of weeks. I've been first. It was the Golden Cross a couple of weeks ago that was setting up. Then now you start looking this week. You have a tight pincher set up the last 2 days, uh, and then it's the consolidation. So last week, GameStop was pretty much flat as a pancake for the entire week, and then we had the pullback at the start of the week for GameStop, and then yesterday and today's rally pushed it back to flat again. So because of that, I'm like consolidation. What they say, the longer the base, the higher in space. So, I mean, you see consolidation here. I mean, it can go both ways, right? So, I mean, the consolidation it could be um, it could be more downside. I just don't think that's the case. And then you look you know, the announcement's got to come soon. I would think that they're Bitcoin purchases. Let me see. Am I having issues here? Hang on. I'm trying to get my chart up and it's not working. All right. Well, you have to think there's going to be an announcement soon. And again, I think the bullish case or the bull scenario for their announcement would be that they only use uh, the the offering money. They don't use the cash on hand, their cash order, and continue to use that as a passive income, right? So that they can keep generating passive income, so fundamentally sound, and then they just continue to raise via offerings, hopefully great term offerings, uh, and to buy Bitcoin or whatever they decide to do with it. So, and I mean, they still do have an underlying business. So that's kind of the thought process there in GameStop. So I still have the May freebies, and then I have the June 50s, and those are in the red. The premiums have come out back when I got those strikes. I mean, I think it was $28, and the premiums were out of control. So those have come back down. I just think it's just a matter of time before it takes off. But again, I've been saying that for the last couple of weeks. Hopefully next week is the day. All right, so that's GameStop. I did one trade today outside of Reddit, which was locking in my Fiverr calls. Um, I always try and rationalize my trades, right? So coming into today, I was looking at yesterday's move. We had the earnings, then up almost 9%. Then yesterday, even with analyst upgrades, Goldman Sachs raising price target into the high 40s, it still struggled, and it got to $30. It just couldn't break through. And then in my head to rationalize, I'm like, if it doesn't break out here today over $30, I'm probably going to lock the calls in for a couple reasons: the uncertainty of what might happen over the weekend. Two, it didn't break over the $30, and three, the premiums are going to continue to erode into next week. And even when it was rallying on Thursday, Wednesday, the premiums on the calls were still not gaining premiums. So that was kind of how I rationalized it. I felt, I closed them flat. And then sure enough, what happens? It breaks into over the 30s at the noon hour pretty much, and then all the way up to 30.83. The calls are, I mean, they're up like 40% now, the ones that I would have if I still held them. I'm not sure if I'm going to revisit because it's like it takes a lot. It's taken a lot of my mental energy that I could probably focus on other names that might have better risk reward setups and profiles. So uh, maybe I'll revisit at some point. But I mean, I always look at Fiverr. I think it's a great undiscovered story. Back before COVID, I used to love Fiverr. It was $20, and it ran all the way up into the 400s or 300s, high 300, maybe it was 400s. COVID. All right, so that's Fiverr. And then Reddit. So after staring at Reddit all week, I finally got some spec lottos. They were up like 70% or so right after I got them. Stock almost up to 113, and then boom, in a matter the first 15 minutes of the day. Then after that, just all the way down to under 106 in less than an hour. Right. So pretty much that was it for the lottos, and then it's just chopped around ever since. Just again a frustrating session for some of the lottos. You kind of want to see it run and go, and same with the market, and that didn't happen. So still a name I think deserves to be trading at much higher levels, especially with its growth. So I'll continue to look for that one, especially for lotto trades. Other names: VKTX, GPCR, still being patient here, adding more strikes. I mean, those after a strong couple weeks, fizzling this week. We're going to have the tariff news on bios, right? Is there's going to be news on the bios? IBB, XBI just getting destroyed this week. I always talk about the biotech sector. I'm like, one of these days and weeks and months, it's going to be back. The biotechs are going to be back on fire, and I think it's since it's like 2.5 years of just horrible performance by the biotechs. You gotta hope one of these days. And there's talks. If you take a look at what tariffs have done or could do to manufacturing, right? I mean, if you want to tariff Vietnam or that country in Africa that makes Levi's jeans, and so that we can produce those garments in the U.S., it's probably not as feasible, right? It's not probably not as economically possible to get a plant, regulations, taxes, workers' compensation, wages, human resources, all that stuff that goes into having some kind of warehouse and factory in the United States. It's totally different cost structure than Africa. So it's probably there's never going to. I mean, I want to say never, but to get the cost to produce the same garment in a factory in Africa or Vietnam, whatever, is not. It's just not going to happen, right? With our current regulatory setup, right? It's no way. But on the flip side, you have the pharma, right? And the drugs, and a lot of it's like the generic drugs have been forced kind of abroad for production reasons because of the low margins. But you also have some of these drug companies that have domiciled, however you pronounce it, have uprooted from the U.S. and went to places like Ireland because of their tax structure. So I think there's some benefits in the biotech space and farmers that probably could happen with, maybe just a little, shake up the system a little bit, and maybe some of those come back. Not only that, when their tax structure, you look at Ireland, whatever they pay, 10% corporate tax rate, and then you come to the U.S., it might be 30%. Even if they came back and instead of you offer them the same exact tax rate that they get in a different country. I mean, rants for other days, but hopefully the biotech names can start to get going. This week I was looking at Biogen, Regeneron. I continue to look at those mega cap names, but then VRTX, which is a name I used to watch back when it was $200 and it was 300. And was it all the way at? Let's see. I don't even see what it did today. Yeah, and I mean all the way into the 500s, and then it had earnings this week and just got destroyed. So I don't know if that's some of the reason biotech is struggling. Hopefully it can find a footing. I love to play biotech names, especially for M&A too. M&A has been pretty much non-existent in biotech so far this year. It's knock on wood. Hopefully that starts up soon. All right, so that's that. Other name, TripAdvisor, which is actually pretty much melting with the rest of the market, slow and steady to the downside today, but all the way up to 1534, and it's pretty much almost flat here, $15. I'll continue to hold the rest of my June 15s. And then, I talking earlier, as much as I want to hope that there's a positive outcome from the trade discussions over the weekend, I just don't have that high conviction. But if there was a name I would be looking at, and unfortunately, Wayfair, which all the way up into 34s to start today, that was a disappointing end to the session. Same with Deckers, which at times yesterday looked like it was break 128. But RH looks like you look, and I keep talking, well, not keep talking, but earlier back in the middle of April, when it was in the 150s, 160s, I said, wow, there's a gap fill, and that gap fills up at 235. You have to think that if there's a positive update over the weekend, or the company announces some kind of special divvy or stock buyback, you have to think that one fills the gap, right? But then I start looking, again, similar to last week at this time, the premiums are expensive. I got the 220s last week, not this time, but earlier on the Friday. And you look, and it's the 225s you have to go up to. So, am I comfortable in a $30 move in RH? I just don't have that conviction just to throw it out there just to hope that there's some kind of deal. So maybe Monday I'll revisit that. I think that's about it, folks. Trying to think of some of the other names here. TTD had that a little bit on the watch list as follow through, especially after its gap on earnings. And then my eyes were on Reddit, and then sure enough, you look back and it opens at like 69, and boom, off to the races up to 75. Pull back down here at $71, so missed that one. And then Tesla today, just impressive stuff. It's I'm not even gonna get a rant on Tesla here, but you have to think obviously the brand has been tarnished, so time is the only thing that can fix some things like that, right? When you have I remember CMG and Taco Bell back when they had their E. coli breakouts and stuff. You could have the best PR campaign after that happens. It's not going to change people's behaviors, right? They're going to think of Taco Bell as someone who got people sick, right? Same with Chipotle. It took a long time to get those stigmas resolved. So, anyway, all right. Rants for other days. And it's getting 15 minutes to the close. Let's have a great day. I'll be back. Rock and roll.